Macaulay Culkin's career boosted with the release of the 1990 holiday comedy Home Alone. The kids that were fortunate enough to see this film, and trust me, there were a lot of them, all had inspiration out the butt from Kevin McAllister, who was accidentally left all by himself and set traps for a duo of burglars that break into his home to steal their goods. It was the main attraction of the film, but deep inside is a great message about spending time with your family, especially around the holidays. The film was such a huge success that a sequel was made 2 years later, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. The plot, well, it seems to bear a striking resemblance to the first film with minor differences. Keyword being minor. The McAllisters are yet again rushing to make their flight for their Christmas vacation. This time around, though, Kevin is not left at home all by himself. He is actually able to make it as far as the airport with them, but gets separated and accidentally boards the wrong flight, taking him to New York instead of Florida. He stays at a hotel room there using his dad's credit card and lives a life of luxury, but should I even continue? You can already tell where this is going. He starts to miss his family, and it eventually boils down to the point where he has to stop the robberies by Harry and Marv. This time around, he's protecting a toy store that's giving donations to a children's hospital, and he's giving the robbers more pain at his uncle's townhouse. Speaking of which, that's where we will start the positives. The trap sequence can certainly deliver a lot of laughs, like in the first film, even if we've seen a plot like this already. However, they seem to be a bit more extreme, like when Marv turns the handles of a sink to wash the paint off his face, then starts getting electrocuted, even with a cartoonish effect of him turning into a skeleton and back. Oh man, I'm willing to bet that Roger Ebert's going to be rolling in his grave because I said that. He gave this film 2 stars out of 4, saying, "Cartoon violence is only funny in cartoons. Most of the live-action attempts to duplicate animation have failed, because when flesh and blood figures hit the pavement, we can almost hear the bones crunch, and it isn't funny." I don't know where this guy gets his sense of humor from, but a lot of what we see during the sequence actually is hilarious, even if the traps go a little overboard, making it seem more like a house of murder. I'm surprised that either of them even survived the night. Moving past that, a lot of the cast from the first film, such as Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Catherine O'Hara, etc., all make their return in this film, but their performances are not as great as before. Pesci and Stern still do good, but Macaulay Culkin was not quite as stellar. From what I've heard, though, he was paid $4.5 million to be in the sequel. I guess he was only doing it for the money, because that's what his mostly robotic performance seems to tell me. Anyway, as far as new cast members go, the best obviously has to be Tim Curry, who plays the concierge at the hotel. He has a lot of funny scenes, especially when he and his staff are getting fooled by 1940s gangster movie audio that Kevin plays on the TV, even if we've seen something like that before. It's really funny how he reacts to everything. Also, the bellhop, played by Rob Schneider, is also worthy of comedy potential. In a lot of the films Schneider was in, he's usually a horrible actor, but in this film, he actually has legit comedy going for him, though not in the same line as Curry. Then there's the pigeon lady, who was pretty much like Old Man Marley from the last film, but not 100% relatable. When I first watched the first film, I legit thought that Old Man Marley was a killer, but it turns out he's a kind-hearted soul. That's the thing about him that made him seem intimidating at first, a creepy background. When we first see the pigeon lady, however, we get no such background, so it doesn't make much sense for Kevin to be afraid of her at first. Notice how I list something positive, but then add the little stinger that they were familiar because they were also done in the first movie and better. That's because it's one of the major issues with this film that a lot of movie sequels seem to have. It's a rehash of the first film. It does introduce new comedic ideas, but that's all it seems to focus its attention on. The story itself is pretty much the same thing as before, except Kevin's in New York. But that's not his home, is it? Then would Home Alone 2 really be a fitting title? I mean, yeah, there's the subtitle, Lost in New York, but the Home Alone part of it seems a bit misleading. Anyway, the film tries to disguise the fact that it's a rehash by making reference to how events like this have happened before. Well, if that's the case, then why the heck are we seeing this again? It's the same plot points, same jokes, same climax, same message, but let's also throw in some reset character development for good measure, with Kevin learning all over again the importance of family, which is something that should have stuck to his brain after the last outing. Honestly, I'm pretty mixed on this film. Whether you like the film or not, honestly, it's hard for me to decide. It brings in a lot of comedy potential, the climax was greatly performed, and some of the new characters, especially Tim Curry, are ridiculously funny. Where it fails, however, is its rehashed plot and reset character development, not to mention not as emotionally engaging as before. It did allow for one last theatrical Home Alone film, which doesn't even have any of the cast from either of the two films, making it pointless to call it Home Alone 3. Then there were two made for TV films, where the former brought back Kevin, who was played by a different actor this time, and the other is another film with a standalone plot and new characters. If you absolutely need to watch a Home Alone sequel, then the second film is the only recommendation I have. But if there's one thing about it that just can't be ignored, the first one was much more enjoyable. It makes me wish this was the only movie in the whole franchise.